I'm Paul Sullivan. I am the founder and chief strategist at Digital Bias, and we are an ABM agency. And today we've brought in one of our key tech partners, RollWorks, and we're going to talk about blended ABM, signal marketing, how to use the intent data well, funnels, strategy, metrics, and give you the whole playbook on how you should be approaching ABM with this blended approach, but keeping in mind all the cool things that the tools can do. And with that, can I introduce my partner from RollWorks today? Bowie, do you want to come in?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Bowie Sievers. I'm a product manager here at RollWorks. I've been with RollWorks actually since the company's inception in 2018, and I'm really responsible for our data and insights features. I'm really happy to be here today and speak with everyone.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Now, I'm just going to open the slides and get us going there so that we've got what we're talking to, and move to slideshow mode. Okay, so how to run blended ABM on HubSpot and RollWorks. So I'm hoping that many of you are already kind of thinking about ABM. That's the reason that you've joined us today, and you're interested to find out how the connection between HubSpot and RollWorks works, and maybe that's going to help you come to a decision on maybe the tech stack that you would be considering. What I want to talk about is, the challenges of today's market and sales leaders, how ABM became my preferred practice version of blended ABM, which is different to how some other people might be running it, where they're running demand and maybe ABM one to few or whatever that looks like. I'm a big fan of naming the business that you want to go and get. I feel like it's confident, it's bold, it's ballsy. And we want to work in environments where we're being so definite about the business that we want. We're super confident, we're leaning into our customer stories, and we're able to go to people and say, look, I'm not going to lean into you with features and benefits. I actually want to talk to you about how we help companies like you. Here are 6 or 7 of them. These are the customer stories. This is what you can expect. And these are the successes they're seeing. And we can see you achieving a similar sort of success in that amount of time. When I think about demand gen, the problem that I have with it is mainly because it's features and benefits led. If you're in a busy market, you all look the same. And if you're all talking about those features and benefits, you all sound the same. And if that happens, I go into inertia and I'm not going to move forward. So let's look at today's challenges. 40% of sales reps say that prospecting is the most challenging part of the sales process. And that's some information that was put together by HubSpot. And 42% of the same audience say that they don't have enough information at hand before they make that first outbound call. Yet 90% of companies are using 2 or more data enrichment tools. So for me, that story already starts to fall apart. I'm wondering what's going on, right? I've got a team of salespeople. I've invested in at least two enrichment tools, which could be an intent tool. It could be the contact data tool. So if you've got those two and you've got a well-stocked CRM, yet you're still saying it's really difficult to prospect and I don't know how to outreach to people, there is definitely like a flux in what's going on in your internal processes, right? Because fundamentally, the way that we're conversing at the moment is I can see who's looking for products or services like I offer. I can find the contact details of the roles of people I assume would be in control or be part of this decision. And yet my sales reps still can't craft messaging that penetrates and gets them in. And that is a compounded fact by the fact that only 2% of cold calls result in an appointment, right? So I've got the more information, but yet my sales team is still saying I can't connect with the target audience. And so that kind of is something that we really need to look into. And then 90% of the companies interviewed said that they were misaligned across strategy, process, content, and culture. And if we think about the 2 big frames of the moment, one is the customer experience and the other one is revenue operations. And so ultimately, if we have revenue operations in our organizations, we should by default improve the customer experience. If we improve the customer experience, you become aligned, the culture improves, how you go out and talk to your customer because you understand them completely that should be impacted in your messaging and your emails and the content on your website. And these numbers, they should start to flip. I would really like to see like a massive shift towards positive numbers. I would like to see more people still with the enrichment tools, 100% of people using the intent. Why would you do anything else? We hate being interrupted, and most places you switch off to it, right? My inbox is probably 2,000 emails long. I don't know what yours looks like, Bowie, but mine definitely is way beyond me getting back into that. And so what is blended ABM, and how do I believe this solves for the context of the story today? So how I see it, blended ABM is the strategy of using all three ABM strategies, one-to-one, one-to-few, and one-to-many simultaneously. So instead of having demand at the bottom of your funnel, you're going to have named target accounts, and that can be a broad number of accounts, 2,000, 1,000, 3,000, whatever that looks like. But companies you surely know are a good fit. Maybe it's a geolocation, an industry vertical, by size of company, all of those other things that layer into that. But finding that sweet spot and saying, these are the companies that we work with the best. And so let's put names on them, and let's only focus our marketing and sales budget and time on going after this business. The rest of it we'll probably get anyway. And why should you care? Well, demand generation, I lent into at the beginning of the conversation. We're always thinking about how this persona has this pain, and if we find that person and at the right time within this time frame, and they're in a decision-making process, we're likely going to be part of that consideration. And I don't believe that that's really true. I feel like the facts are, your buyer is probably 70 to 80% educated on solution providers by the time they even start speaking to you, right? So are you prepared to continue to spend 70 to 80% of your budget educating the market? Or do you want to flip that and go after business that you should land, right? This is where I see the nuanced difference. So at the bottom, the widest open is, here's a persona, here's their pain points, here's our features and benefits. Let's put the content out there and see what happens. I'm not playing that game, and I never advise my clients to play that game. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but also I feel like after you've acquired a certain number of customers, it should become apparent what the sweet spot looks like. And so therefore, I would argue the case that blended ABM in terms of one-to-many, one-to-few, one-to-one should carry more weight in the decision-making process than demand generation. And another reason being is to run ABM, you need sales enablement. And so that means that if you're looking for that alignment of teams, this is a great driver towards it. You don't need sales enablement to run demand gen. And in fact, the two teams can operate totally apart from each other. And therefore that gap still sits there. Where ABM, you have to work with your sales team. You have to work on the good fit accounts. You have to understand what's been going on, why they close accounts, why they don't. Bringing customer success into that conversation to figure out the complaints so we can get ahead of all of those things in our ABM strategy. So for me, looking at this infographic, I'm a fan of one-to-many, one-to-few, one-to-one. Bowie, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, definitely. So building on what Paul said, that alignment organizationally to run ABM is critical. And what we're going to talk about is like a framework that you can use to really drive that alignment across your organization. And what happens here at RollWorks is we always get a number of prospects or customers who come to us and say, hey, we need to drive more MQLs. And often that MQL definition is just a form fill on the website. However, that form fill is just one action that might indicate interest. And as you know, oftentimes a low percentage of those form fills actually result in that company then becoming a customer. And so we know that there are many other valuable signals that will help your revenue teams align on the priority of an outbound activity. And so as this graphic is showing, just 3% of B2B site visitors fill out a form. And if you're waiting for that form fill, you're really risking missing out on the 97% of available buyer interactions that could indicate readiness, just like a form fill does. And so this slide shows a few here, but there are dozens of signals that are really useful for these revenue teams. And most of those are not or cannot be included in an MQL scoring model. And so in a down economy where, arguably there are fewer buyers in market and that, buyer pie, so to speak, is smaller, we really believe that no revenue team can afford to ignore these other signals available both at the contact level and the account level. So then you're probably asking, what does this mean? What's the solution? How do we operationalize this? So Paul, you can jump to the next slide.
Sure.
So we are, championing and seeing this rapid evolution of how revenue teams are defining their top of funnel and mid funnel activity, and so that really ties back to what Paul was mentioning with the one to one, one to few, one to many, and so what we see is revenue teams adopt this fit first buying signal approach, and that really ensures that they're driving toward and acting upon the wide range of those meaningful buyer actions. So starting at the far right of this slide, you start by defining this data-backed ICP as usual, and you identify the target accounts and the buying committee that falls within that ICP. And from there, demand gen and ABM programs can focus on driving awareness and engagement within this MQL group, launching programs against these form-filling MQLs. Again, as usual, this is nothing new here. But because this represents such a small part of the pie of the buying signals, we really recommend that revenue teams understand that there are multiple signal types that go beyond this MQL contact-based signal. So if we move to the left, just one notch here, modern revenue teams are really starting to generate what we call here at RollWorks hot contacts. And a hot contact is really just a lead type from RollWorks that takes brand awareness and turns it into demand capture by de-anonymizing a percentage of high fit contacts who are clicking on an ad or visiting your website, but who have not filled out that form yet. So therefore, they have not qualified to be that MQL. And without a company like RollWorks, this behavior would be invisible in your normal system of record, and it would just be logged as an unknown site visit or an unknown digital ad engagement. But now what we're able to do is revenue teams can identify and pass along these additional contact level signals before that form fill. So just like you would do with a normal MQL, we're just kind of filling the top of the funnel there with even more contacts that might not have taken that one interaction of going and filling out a form. So we're really just providing greater volume of brand aware engaged contacts. So then if we take that and again move one step to the left, there's only going to be so many de-anonymized and engaged contacts. And so it's critical that revenue teams also look at account behavior. And so you can categorize this in a number of ways. Here at RollWorks, we typically call them marketing qualified accounts. I've also seen them represented as AQLs, account qualified leads. And so what this slice of the pie consists of are accounts that are engaging with your brand through a combination of first-party track behavior. So this can come in the form of maybe opening emails from your sales teams. Maybe they're visiting your specific pages on your website. And until recently, this breadth of data and the view across the buying committee was really, siloed and buried in disparate sales and marketing data sources. Or, maybe you did have access to it, but it was really inflexible. It was coming in this one size fits all approach. And so the beauty of a platform like RollWorks is that revenue teams can kind of tie and stitch this data together that was previously all siloed. And what you can do is create a highly customized view of account engagement based off of these, really strong signals for the sales team. And then finally, we can move beyond this first party data. So again, kind of moving one notch over to the left and look at intent data, everyone's favorite hot topic in B2B. And so what we're able to do here is revenue teams can use this intent data and really come up with an intent qualified definition. And this would be made up of accounts that are researching relevant, maybe bottom funnel topics or keywords on third-party websites, but have yet to interact with your brand. And so we know intent isn't new, but what separates intent as a data point and a really true buying signal is when you have multiple sources of intent that kind of corroborate that readiness to buy. And so until recently, oh, go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, Bowie, I just wanted to jump in here because one of my favorite things about RollWorks is the double intent engine, right? You've got the RollWorks intent, and then you've got your secondary intent through Bombora.
Yeah, that's right. And so what we like to say is that when you have multiple corroborating sources of intent data, that gives you a much higher confidence that the account is truly in market. And so that's what makes intent particularly strong. And you're able to really like customize that definition of intent qualified. Maybe you only really care if someone is researching your own company or your competitors. And so again, highly customizable approach.
Yeah, and sorry, Jack Bauer, just jump in here. So I just want to give relevant context because your conversation is really, really interesting. And you're talking, and I'm thinking to myself, the way that you're talking is making us really think about what we're doing here at Bias, right? Because Bias, we're a partner, we're a customer, and we're using the tool ourselves. And the way that we've set up our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, which isn't unique to us, but most certainly makes the most sense, is that our tier 1 clients or the tier 1 targets are actually our own present customers. Like those are the people that are going to have the relationship with us. We're looking at expansion revenue, which is a great use case for ABM as well. And so you say, right, the people that know us is probably the best place to start expanding those accounts. Then our tier 2s are leaning into this intent thing, are accounts that are showing intent and have visited our website. So they're showing the intent around the keywords we've chosen, and we've seen them hit the pages on our website. And so we know that they've started to engage with our brand. And then our tier 3s are clients that we've named, but are yet to engage with at all in any sense. So really supports what you're saying there.
Yeah, and that's a great point. You can almost replicate the same approach with your current customers versus that acquisition engine. So it's really repeatable once you have it set up, and it becomes pretty seamless and plug and play. And the best part is all of this information is written back into HubSpot, so it makes it available for the entire team to access, and having that in your source of truth, in your system of record, really kind of crystallizes it and gets alignment across teams. So maybe just to put a bow on this, I think the key here is that teams' success really lies in the fact they are not focusing on just one of these buying signal categories like that MQL. And the benefit of a platform like RollWorks is that what we're able to do is really extend your MQLs, and all of that information, like I mentioned, is written back into HubSpot so that you can align across your revenue organization on the accounts and people to prioritize. And then from there, what you're able to do is based off of the signal strength, so to speak, you can begin to implement programs and plays that then respond in an automated fashion to the signals across the different categories and how much weight you apply to those. And ultimately, you're really just expanding the top of the funnel and subsequent sales opportunities and deals. And so this is where that blended ABM approach becomes so critical. So as you're moving from left to right, that's where you get into from your one to many, one to few, and one to one, being able to pass along, individual buying level signals, ultimately really just maximizing your team's at-bats for either acquiring or like Paul mentioned, growing your current customers. So Paul, I'll kind of hand things back over to you. What do you think of this? I know you have some ideas on how clients of Digital Bias are evaluating the quality of an account and contact. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, with all of the strength on the data, the interactions with your website, I think it's really key in a climate where everyone's being asked to do more with less, right? So, even for CMOs on this call, you're probably thinking, gosh, I've got to make this investment. But you want to make an investment in the right place, right? And I know that demand gen, demand capture, and we haven't even got into that yet, but all of these different strategies all cost. And so, there's political capital to be expended. And so these kind of things are about how we enable you to convey the value of these strategies into your own businesses. But coming back to what Bowie says is, the strength of RollWorks' integration to HubSpot is that you can literally set up so much automation that if you're like us, all we do is push contact data into our CRM. So we go in on a Monday, we go into the intent in RollWorks, we look at the accounts that don't know us, or the accounts that both don't know us and do, and then we identify which ones are showing the strongest signals around key products and services we offer. And then we literally pull those companies into the CRM, push the contact data of the personas we have. And so our personas are highly identified by a job title. And we split by managers and C-suite. So we get really in deep to our segmentation. And then we have persona-based messaging on automated outbound sales sequences. So literally the moment we figure whether it's PLG, whether it's ABM, whether it's HubSpot CRM, the right person based on the intent data and the persona will get a customized message, because we can pull the intent data into an object in the CRM. We can then say within a workflow if this keyword is in the intent, and you've got high intent and very high. So you could even go into the difference there. So maybe only focus on very high intent within the last 7 days, or the last 14 days, or the last 30 days. And so you've got all this timing around what's going on to focus on, do we just want to attack all of this intent data? Or do we say we only want everything that's fresh? So we only think there's a maximum 14 days. There's so much you can do that we're talking to our clients about that is designed to sort maybe their sales cycles or the way that their business goes about customer acquisition.
Yeah, and the neat part is once you have a framework like this, which you can kind of just build out almost in like Excel or a Word doc, then you kind of translate it into a system like RollWorks. It all becomes very automated, pushing the data into HubSpot, keeping you in HubSpot where most of you all probably prefer to work out of. And like Paul mentioned, you can just set up some workflows, and then it becomes very hands off to where you're just really fine tuning and tinkering and optimizing at that point.
Exactly. It all comes down to messaging then. You start looking at, okay, my emails are getting open, but are people coming back to me? Or my attachments, are they getting read? Are the links getting opened? And then you can start A/B testing real-time outbound email sequences, so that if people are going 3 or 4 emails in and you've got a 6 email signal, well, if everything falls apart at 4, let's change up that messaging. Let's see if we can move people out, and let's see if we can activate them. So you get into doing the things that you should be doing, right, and letting the tech enable you to be on that conversion focus. So a couple of things you talked about here, and you mentioned the account qualified lead and the account activated lead. We'll come to that, but why should you listeners care? Why should you care about this conversation to now? I think one of the things that I leaned into is sales enablement has to be a part of your ABM strategy. We are not lining up accounts for sales to close. You are agreeing a target account group for you both to run to the finish line. And marketing's job is to work with sales and make sure that they have all the assets they need. And to do that, you need a clear sales enablement plan so that you know what the touch points are, and they're clearly defined based on your account score. ABM gives cross-functional alignment, and everyone's looking for that. Everyone's looking for that single source of data, that shared view of the customer, which follows up into number 3, and optimized onboarding. And with ABM, you're planning to convey value, you're planning to tell the story, you're planning on how you're going to convey to this particular account how other accounts like them have had their success. So that means that, case studies and all of that other materials that you should have in play, ready to go, should all be at hand for your team. And as part of your sales playbook, which is the HubSpot functionality, those case studies should sit there. If you have 4 products, have 4 playbooks. Make sure that the assets for the right playbook are available to your team at the right time. And also, this brings a highly targeted approach to customer acquisition. And again, when you think about wasting dollar, You don't want to be thinking about wasting dollar. You want to be thinking about how much of that dollar do I make work for me at all times, rather than is 80 cents in the dollar going out on a waste of educating a market that's not really buying at the moment, right? So those kind of things are going to be questions you need to answer. Hopefully, buyers could be a partner to help you do that. So AQLs and AALs. This is something that we actually developed here at Buyers, because we're looking at how people use metrics to tell themselves how to behave, right? KPIs, OKRs, all of this, right? And so we broke it down into two. You've got account qualified leads. And for us, thinking about this blended ABM approach, thinking about how useful RollWorks and intent data becomes, the amount of automation available to you when you've got HubSpot there, as I've just leaned into for our own use case, we want to know an account has identified all of the decision makers. And you can probably know that, right? You're selling to these businesses time and time again: procurement, finance, CRO, CFO, CMO, like all the decision makers. Make sure you've got that quality data in the CRM, but don't just push the contact record in there. Assign them in HubSpot to the buyer role. Who's your typical champion? Who's a typical sponsor? Who's the typical blocker? So that you're starting to build out this picture, because your reporting gets super strong when you're doing that, and you can action that intelligence because you can start to find weak spots and focus on improving those, right? So account qualified leads is where you've identified all the members of the buying committee, and all of the contact records for those people that are available are in the CRM. Now, don't get me wrong. Even the best data platforms don't always have the emails, and they might not have a contact number. So you have to be kind of tight on what it is that you do. We use Cognism, and they have the verified email toggle. So whenever we're using data, we only go for verified emails. We don't go for the catch-all. And whilst it limits the amount of contact data we're pushing in, we're improving the quality of the contact data that goes in. And that's also super important. The other side of that is, you could say, well, if RollWorks can de-anonymize these people, if a catch-all email actually works, then why wouldn't I just want the contact record in my CRM just in case? Well, the other side of that is, as long as you're not emailing people, which could then directly impact you, because if the emails are not higher quality, you could then damage your domain sending score. And so, there's a lot of tactical things and technical things you have to consider. I just want to make sure we're covering the ground. And then you've got your account activated leads. And that, for me, is a target account with 50% of the committee aware and engaged. Now, I had a chat with Bowie just before the call, and leaning into what he said when he was going through his own slides, which was here, and we're talking about the buying signals, MQLs in particular, right, and just being a form fill. Like, there are so many companies that have their sales team outreach because someone downloaded an ebook, and that has got to be the complete worst waste of time ever, right? You're looking for multiple touch points to build lead scoring in. Now, lead scoring typically used in inbound and demand gen, because you are targeting individuals with those strategies. Now, think about that at an account level. What you're trying to get to is a lead score for each individual member of the buying committee. And if that makes sense, does that make sense to you, Bowie?
Yeah, well, I think basically what you're looking at here with this account activated leads is multiple members of the buying committee showing some of that hand raising behavior, and only then does it warrant that high touch personalized sales outreach. And so a question I have for you, Paul, is,
Yep.
you have 50% here. Are there different kind of like thresholds to that, or is that kind of a benchmark best practice, or do you see some of your clients kind of going maybe down to 20% or 25%?
I think it's interesting. It's a really good question. And let me give you some context to why I just put the number 50. I mean, obviously, I feel like setting a benchmark of, like, we're looking for an activation rate of around 50% of the committee is good. You have to add your own context to that. I operate on the facts that I know, right? So we're saying there's an average of somewhere between 10 now and 15 decision makers in the buying committee. I mean, that's a huge number. So maybe going for 7 to 9, or 7 to 8 8 people activated is a bit high, but also give it context, right? it's almost like, which roles do you need to see activated, right? I try to stop people getting really happy because they've got a champion, because every company that's engaged with you should have the champion. They should either be your sponsor or your champion. They're the person that are bought in, they like whatever it is you're doing, and so they are really interested in bringing you on board. Now you've got to enable that person to go and engage with the rest of the decision makers, and whether you have the sales enablement materials for that person to go and convey, or whatever that looks like, ultimately it's about context. So if in a typical deal there are still say 10 people in the decision making process, but 4 of them are heavy hitters, they're the people that really swing it, then focus on getting those 4 activated, and then it becomes like 4 and 10 and it's 40%. So I think you have to use best judgment, but definitely don't go like overboard because one person in your account is like super happy about what it is you're doing, because it's all about where you spend your time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like basically, you want to tailor that to your business based off of the number of members in the buying committee, and even like, what that buying role is and where that potential customer or current customer is at in the buying process or renewal process.
Yeah, I mean, take legal for example. If you're doing a enterprise deals and legal get involved, it's highly unlikely that the lawyer is gonna come and visit your website. They're waiting to see the contract, and so
Yep.
ultimately you don't want to see. You're not really looking for signals from that person. Yeah, it's nice if they've been on your website. Maybe that's you score them higher because hey, legal only want to see the contract and they've been on my site and they've looked at
They're already involved. Yeah, that's a
yeah, they're already involved. So, again, it's context and building that context around your business based on what you know, right? And so agencies that are listening, really lean into your buyer's experience, your client's experience of the sales process, and nail that for them and help them get those like lead scoring elements into HubSpot. So when you're reporting at an account level, you can say, well, yeah, you still got your champion, but these 3 people have only actually looked at 1 page. So it looks like it's activated because you can see 4 people, but ultimately is that level of engagement really warranting looking out? Or is it someone got really excited, went and spoke to a few people, and then everyone said, yeah, but they haven't been back for 30 days, which would give you an insight that maybe the interest isn't there. So again, context.
Certainly, certainly. So basically on the left-hand side of the slide is really where you have your depth and breadth of data in your CRM. On
Yep.
the right-hand side is where you're then kind of taking that, measuring to see that you have multiple members of the buying committee, of the buying group, kind of engaging and using that as a signal to kind of align with your sales team on
Yep.
that level of priority.
Yeah, and that really targets the mindset on where to spend time, right?
Totally, totally.
Cool. Can we move on? Are we done?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So how do you use it? How do you use the system? How do the tools come together? So some of this is taken from some work we've done in the past. So we want to use real world examples, not the theoretical examples. And so we'll walk through it. Bowie, feel free to jump in at any point.
Sure.
If anyone's got any questions from the audience, I want to make sure that I'm getting those. So the company we worked with sold into very traditional industry verticals, and their audience were all $1 billion plus companies. And so it was quite easy to identify who they were by virtue of the industries, but also by the way that we could go about targeting them. Even under a blended ABM approach, to really get it going, if you think about the bottom of the funnel, which is, or the top of the funnel, actually, the top of the funnel, the widest point, which where the one-to-many approach comes in. It's a lot of air cover and it's a lot of industry-led messaging, where really what you're trying to do is drive people from a very wide top of funnel, maybe into some narrow vertical industry focused content, microsites on your website, so that you can start getting more and more personalization the further down the funnel they come, right? So when we were doing this, we were looking at 5 microsites, and excuse me, in actual fact, they had about 10 verticals. So at the end of it, there would have been around 10 microsites active when we finally got there. But also, you can only really focus on, like, even with an agency on board, maybe 25 accounts, maybe, and in a 2-month period, that's still pushing it in terms of activation and engagement. But just wanted to preface that. Oops, nice animation there. And then we looked at targeting and account identification. So who are the personas? We're talking about accounts. We still need personas because the messaging will still be for each persona. What is useful for them? What materials do we need for that individual? All of that stuff. And in this example, it was an ESG SaaS platform. We identified 75 potential standard job titles that fit the ESG role. And then we found out when we looked into this that in some companies, the longest titles ever were available to us. They were like the CMO and the CRO, and they were like the people officer, and then they did ESG. And then when you find out, when you looked at the type of ESG they did, they weren't actually the right ESG person. So there was a lot of work that went into finding the right ones. And then we used Zoom Info to enrich that data. So US, targeting the US market, use Zoom Info, enriching the data in the CRM through Zoom Info in a very automated way. And for those who have not used Zoom Info before, the one element of their products that I like is leans really strongly into, sorry, I'm going to jump about a bit here, into the news. So this news, account news, Zoom Info have an integration where they're constantly scanning to find data online about your buyer. So, you know, if they're doing webinars somewhere, or if they've been commented on in the news, or any of that stuff that you can add into personalization, Zoom Info have this field that can enrich, that send that data into your CRM. So you can actually, you know, kind of solve for this problem with HubSpot and Zoom Info. So just kind
Yeah,
of
and it's a great way for personalization. You know, as you're beginning to craft that outreach, you're able to see kind of anything about that person or company that's going on. So it's a great tool to have to kind of do your research.
yeah, I mean, and and when we saw it, we were, you know, I was quite elated, to be fair, because scrolling through LinkedIn records, going back 3 months, looking at everything someone's posted of, and then putting that into a spreadsheet so that you've got this bank of data is hard work. 100 hours of research went into kind of crafting this strategy. So there is a lot of work to it, and that's why a lot of people work with agencies. Not that I'm selling myself, by the way. And then the buying committee. Who's in the buying committee? What job, what buying roles do you want to give them? Who's your champion, deal influencer, gatekeeper, approver, blockers, legal and compliance? All of these people, you really want to get them into your CRM, because you can do some really cute re-engagement campaigns. Then anyone who meets buyer role economic buyer that was a detractor, and we've now got some new materials that can help shift their mindset, let's just hit those guys up with this independent marketing campaign that we're using as a secondary catch-all to support the ABM program, right? So all of it matters, and most people think it doesn't, but it does, because everything matters. And I think that's what we do here at Bias. We really focus on the detail, because it's what you can do down the line. Every dollar that you spend, whether you're working with us or you're taking this information away and applying it to your own business, I want you to be able to maximize the return. And if that return doesn't come today, it will come on the next cycle. And that's what I want. And that's where you get all of this automation. And then, you know, you can feed this back up. You know, it's all interesting for me anyway. So how did we do it? Fortune 1000. We used another platform called Ocean.io, which is a great tool. I'm not going to dive too deeply into that, but Ocean.io, they build B2B lookalike lists. And so, you know, if you're not just intent on waiting for RollWorks to tell you who's looking, you can, if you attach it to your CRM, every time you close a deal, it will go and build you a list of companies that match the profile of the deal you just closed, right? So when you think about ABM, and it's about that sweet spot, if you identify the sweet spot of clients, you can use other tools that just help you find more and more and more and more of them. That should really accelerate your revenue path, as long as you're telling the right story to each of those customers. And then beyond that, RollWorks. We've got RollWorks, their ABM tool, demand capture. They've got the intent. They're telling you who's in market, and they're asking you to do all of the things that we're talking about today to make sure you can capitalize on using that intent and capturing the demand. Who is in market today? Who did we miss when we built our target account list? You can set up your ICP, and then all of a sudden you're into a full circle ABM program. And then on the outside, for anyone, do we want some logos? You know, do you want the Facebooks of the world, or whatever that looks like? I think Facebook was one these guys wanted, but yeah, that's kind of how we see it. The hottest targets, and then you're using the tech to do the job outside of that. And there's a matrix we put together that kind of helps people align to how all the tools came together. Just for this example, of course, HubSpot CRM there, ZoomInfo as a contact record tool, Ocean.io as the B2B list generator, and RollWorks coming in, talking about identifying how your identified account list and the total addressable market in play, right? You literally can't miss what's going on. And then you're using ZoomInfo for the data enrichment piece, because if you use RollWorks properly, you can de-anonymize people behaving in what we call the dark funnel, right? So you're able to say, right, you have identified these people in your CRM and we can see them in our network of websites. Is that right, Bowie?
Yeah, 100%. So if the contact exists in your CRM, that enables us the ability to de-anonymize any activity that they have there.
Yeah.
Paul, I did have a quick question on this. So,
Yep.
you know, it looks like it's four different technologies.
Yep.
You know, it could be a lot or daunting to get started, you know, and then kind of onboarding all of this different technology. Where do you recommend your clients get started if they're, you know, kind of brand new to this?
Yeah, let me give you a story, right? So there's a Cognism, I mentioned them earlier. The reason I want to go back to them is because they've been telling a very public story about their journey through demand generation and then when they move to intent, right? So Fran Langham is the CMO down there, and she's quite active on LinkedIn, and she talks about how in their demand gen campaign generated 47,500 signups to content. I mean, that's multiple digital assets.
Yeah.
And all of that activity resulted in 4 clients when they looked at the attribution, right? So
oh my gosh.
that is like, what a waste of time, really. And then they engaged in intent data and using intent in their marketing strategy and sales strategy. And it is now 1 in 25 that they close, which is a huge shift, right? So why did I tell you that story? Not actually to downplay demand gen, but actually, if you are like a Cognism and you've been doing good, strong marketing and you've got a lot of signups and you've got a lot of contact data, well, maybe ZoomInfo isn't that relevant, because you might have 5,000-10,000 records and you're hoping that to re-engage these customers, they actually might be the best fit for you. So if you come prepared with your own contact records, fine. But if you don't, I feel like you lose out on some of the power of RollWorks, and then, you know, you kind of, is it worth the $3,000 per year to pay for one of these tools or not? That's a question you ask yourself, right?
Yeah.
But I'm talking about best adoption of tools, right? So
Yep.
ZoomInfo, Cognism, we know, whatever, Seamless.ai, whatever it is, it's up to you. Ocean really in this mix is a real nice to have. But if your ABM program is actually like working at scale, maybe you just want to scale that further. And again, $3,000 for the year, it might be a worthwhile investment if it's going to land you. You know, I don't know what the ROI and the ACV are on your clients, but if it's high and you've got good net retention and clients are staying with you for 3 or 4 years, or they're renewing every year, maybe the 3K a year is worth it. But if you really wanted to strip it back, you could say HubSpot and RollWorks gives you some strength and it gives you the ability to run ABM and you can get going with it. But it's all about what you want to make.
Yeah, so it seems like you almost just have to really take an honest self-assessment of your company and kind of see, you know, do you have good data in your CRM? Do you have enough data in your CRM? Do you have a framework already kind of that is enabling that partnership? And based off of kind of where you fall in the spectrum of strengths and weaknesses there, that kind of determines which vendor you might want to like reach out to first in this framework.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say that like, is HubSpot an ABM tool? It's a great ABM tool, but is it a real ABM tool? No, because it's a CRM and marketing automation tool. What I love about it is when you talk about landing pages, micro sites, and all of that stuff that you need to build, a marketer can build. So it's not about devs and all that added clunk and time and stuff. It is like, right, we've built one microsite, let's just clone it and change the data. So it does pay for itself in the long term. And so if you've got a proper ABM tool like RollWorks there, I think the other piece that we haven't really talked about here, and I just looked at it, was the fact that your audience is collected from RollWorks, you can actually push into LinkedIn, and then you can retarget in LinkedIn. And if, as you know, as your opportunities are moving down the line, you can start serving up case studies to them live on LinkedIn where they are in their arena. And I think that's an overlooked part of the toolkit as well.
Yeah, 100%. We have a very deep integration with LinkedIn where you can either push the audiences into LinkedIn, into your ad manager account, or you can run them right in RollWorks if you want to kind of centralize all of that ad management.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, hopefully this is proven good value. So let's look at what a funnel might look like. We've been talking a lot about it with words, and let's see what it looks like visually. So we talk about the one-to-many part. Bowie, I mean, look, we're aligned on this. How do you see this part of the pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably where you're looking at either those named accounts that aren't showing any intent, aren't necessarily engaging with your brand, but you know that they're a key target for the team, and this is where that one to many can really come into play. And
Yep.
What we always recommend here is kind of running ads, web, LinkedIn, maybe Facebook and Instagram, and then aligning that message that you're showing on the web and in LinkedIn and on Facebook inventory, and aligning that to some of the content that you're then driving to that microsite.
Yeah, for sure. And then from there, you can get into more of your strategic nurturing because you've now got contact data in your CRM and they can be opted in. And so you're able to enroll them in like marketing sequences. Obviously, you can't do that in Europe. They need to be opted in. You can't just put contact data into your CRM and then enroll them in. You can reach out to them in sales. So I do like to use, I rely heavily on the sales sequences when we're running ABM out of HubSpot and we're not, we haven't got opted in data. So you are allowed to try and sell services. You just can't put people into marketing campaigns. And then what we're talking about here, the strategic assessment, this is actually something we're doing bias, how do we provide custom tools? How do you make your B2B marketing sticky? How do you give yourself a good way to understand a lot more about your audience and provide more value, right? So in this case, we're putting together some microsites on our own website at the moment. And, there's all the data, the reports, the relevant blogs and all of that content that is specific to that industry. And then we've got this strategic assessment. How do we let people experience us without experiencing us? We've got an assessment, and the assessment is not a quiz. It's designed to give you an understanding of where you are across your marketing capacity, from positioning and messaging right the way through to strategic, delivery on the ABM side. And that sends you a report, and it's got action. You get scored. It gives you insight. These are the things you should do. This is the gaps that you need to fill. That is all building trust and authority, right? And then hopefully, a demo, a consultation, whatever it is, that's the bit that you're looking for. And then really, you're just running people to the winning line. And the thing is, the one to few piece, really, you're hoping at the point of this consultation or demo, you close the account, like you win that account. But if it's a really valuable account and the revenue is going to be worthwhile, you go one-to-one on it and you take it right to the finish line with your sales team. Does that sound like a familiar playbook or something that you'd be hearing, Bowie?
Yeah, 100%. Basically, as you start to see more engaged members of the buying committee as they progress through that funnel, you want to start to use a more tailored, highly personalized approach based off of that, like where they're falling in that signal journey. So this is a great, just kind of where we were showing kind of a flywheel. Now we have the traditional funnel, and this maps directly back to that signal-based approach as a framework. So I think it makes a great intuitive sense that as you start to see more engagement from more people, that you want to then kind of apply different tactics and more resources to those companies.
Yeah, and I think there's some really strong parts of HubSpot that can lean into this, right? So if you're on HubSpot CMS, you can lean into their smart modules. So you can do reverse IP lookup. And, you know, if you've got a micro site that's targeted at a particular vertical and, you know, it is 10, 15, 20 accounts that you're going after, you can also preload, you know, logos, pictures of those businesses, anything that when that business arrives at that microsite, they see themselves, that level of personalization, that thing that we've been talking about for the past 15 years, you're able to execute it. So all of a sudden, we're not just talking about industry verticalization, but actually industry content, but with your target account's logo visibly on the page for them to see. And you couldn't probably get more personalized than that until you're actually having a conversation, right? So there's some really good mix between having what RollWorks does and how HubSpot supports it.
Totally. Marries the inbound and outbound. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
No. It is. It is the mix of inbound and outbound. I know we're getting long, so I really want to kind of get through this because 45 minutes was the aim. But yeah, how do you do it? What are you measuring? You know, we're talking about accounts reached, visited, engaged, the number of unique visitors. So again, you know, how many of the buying committee have been to the website and what were they doing? You know, are you monitoring when accounts are saying that this isn't the right time, and are they offering you to come back in a fixed period of time? The number of accounts targeted per campaign, the responses you get, the opportunities generated, and obviously the value of the opportunities. And there's more. But Bowie, what would you be measuring?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of these are really great metrics. Many of them kind of help feed into that signals-based approach. Maybe one that comes to mind is just kind of the percent of accounts that you've kind of made on your named list, your target account list that are showing intent. And again, that kind of all is just really feeding into the signals-based approach that we talked about. So yeah, I think all of these are great though.
Perfect. And what are my takeaways? Well, blended ABM aligns around a single view of the customer. I believe fundamentally ABM drives towards revenue operations. And then when you align those teams, I believe you can only really go to further success as long as everyone buys the same dream. The secondly is that you can't really align these teams without significantly improving the customer experience, because you have to plan the success of the customer. And when you're doing that, everything should move towards execution for the better. And that includes shared KPIs. And then finally, you could grab 100 free in-market target accounts at digitalbuyers.com. And under our resources tab, there's an ABM account finder, and our partnership with RollWorks. You can go there and you can find 100 accounts matching your ICP that are in market today. So they're your 3 key takeaways. Bowie, anything else that you want to add?
I think that's it, Paul. It's been fun. I'm glad we were able to do this, and hopefully everyone has a couple takeaways from this.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Thanks for attending. Cheers.
Take care.